Locked on!
Hello, welcome to this week's Battle of the Ports as we take a look at a true classic from Namco. This is the 20th of November 1981 arcade release, Bosconian. Bosconian was commercially successful in Japan and received positive critical reception, but it did not achieve the global commercial success of other shoot-'em-ups from the golden age of arcade video games. The objective of Bosconian is to score as many points as possible by destroying enemy missiles and bases. The player controls the Starfighter, a ship that can move in 8 directions and fires both forwards and backwards simultaneously. During each round, several green enemy bases known as base stars appear, all of which must be destroyed in order to advance to the next round. The number of bases increase with each round. Each base has 6 globe-like cannons arranged in a hexagon around a central core. To destroy the base, the player must either shoot the core or destroy all 6 cannons, the later of which gives the player extra points. In later levels, cores begin defending themselves by opening and closing while launching missiles. A radar display on the right hand of the screen shows where enemies are located relative to the player. The game also features a color-coded alert system with voice commands.
Alert! Alert! Battle station. Alert! 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 Battle station. Alert! Alert! Spaceship sighted.
The very first port came to the Sword M5 in December 1982. This was developed by Takada. The Sword M5 is a very primitive Japanese computer if put up against the likes of the MSX, so what we have here is a reasonable port of the arcade game. Yeah, it's lacking any speech and the enemy base sprites seem to be on a different plane to everything else, but overall, for the time, this would have been most acceptable. It wasn't until 2 years later when the next port came out for the MSX on July 14th, 1984, from Namco themselves. Now, the MSX isn't known for smooth scrolling, however, I have to say Namco have done a fairly good job with it here. While the game isn't silky smooth, it is smooth enough not to give you motion sickness. We also get a very playable version of the game too, with recognizable sprites. Unfortunately, all the enemy bases seem to be orientated the same way, unlike the arcade that would have you attacking from above or the side. The NEC PC6001mkII was next, with a release developed by Micomsoft in March 1986. After the pretty cool MSX port, I was surprised at how chunky the PC6001 version is. With everything being so large, it does make the game rather tricky to play at first. It does become easier with some practice, but certainly won't be my go-to version of Bosconian. Known as Super Bosconian, we saw the Sharp X1 port get released in January 1987. This was also developed by Micomsoft, and I'm happy to say that they did a much better job with this version than they did with the PC6001 release. This Sharp X1 version sounds like the arcade, apart from missing most of the speech. It also looks very much like the arcade game. Again, another very playable and fun port. The West finally got ports in 1987 from Binary Design and published by Mastertronic. First off is the Commodore 64 release, which is called Bosconian 87, and it's total shit. Just a Western developer to take a basic Japanese arcade game that has already been ported 4 times and completely screw it up. Your ship moves way too fast, the playfield is cluttered with crap all over the place, enemies can fly into you as soon as you respawn, and the collision detection is crap. Truly a bloody awful version of a classic arcade game. Also known as Bosconian 87, this ZX Spectrum version is vastly superior to the god-awful Commodore 64 game we just saw. The Specky version is playable, but can feel a little cramped at times. In this version you can collect powered-ups to boost your firepower as well as fuel. Although to be fair, I never found myself in a situation where fuel was required. The added BGM while playing is a nice touch, it certainly makes the game a bit more fun. The Amstrad CPC also gets a version which is basically the ZX Spectrum version with even less colour, but it does have better defined graphics. Playability is good, but I'd say the Specky version is an overall better experience. On December 20th, 1988, we saw Micom bring Bosconian to the Sharp X68000. This features the original game and a newly arranged version that adds a pretty solid upbeat BGM and a few extra graphical touches. The majority of the graphics do look the same between both versions though. We can't complain because the game looks really nice and even sounds like the original arcade when played in original mode. I would say that the default difficulty is a bit higher than the arcade original, but overall it's a very good port that fans of the game will adore.
Locked off. Alive, alive. Locked off. Alive, alive. Alive, alive. Alive, alive. Battle station. Locked off.
The final non-emulated port of Bosconian was released on the PlayStation as part of Namco Museum Volume 1 on November 22nd, 1995. This is more of a bare bones port featuring nothing fancy, unlike the Sharp version. But that's okay, because what we do get is a very close representation of the arcade. There are some differences that the hardcore fan will notice, but for the average gamer this is basically arcade perfect.
Locked off. Alive, alive. Battle station. Basic silent. Locked off. Alive, alive. Alive, alive. Alive, alive. Locked off. Alive, alive.
And let's take a look at all those versions of Bosconian running side by side.